So, welcome. This is the second in our series of building financial resilience. And today we are talking about non-diluted funding. For those of you who don't know MPA are a firm of professional services specialists, and we look after businesses, primarily innovation businesses around engineering, manufacturing, IT. And we help them from the financial side. So things like innovation funding, that's your R&D tax credits, patent box, how to commercialise your IP, grants, specialist tax services, SEIS, EIS, how to make yourself more attractive to those initial stage funders, looking at your exit strategy and how you're planning for that, and business advice. We have, or we supply part-time or contracted financial directors. So there's sometimes in your business that you're going through different stages that you may need expert help, but you might not need them all the time. So it's how you can dial them up as and when you need them. But today we're here and we're talking about non-diluted funding. So that's mainly going to be around grants. And I'm really pleased to have Dr. Chloe Sharp as my expert today. She's also driving the slides for me because technology wasn't working for me today. So Chloe will be moving the slides along as well. So hopefully we're going to be in sync. So Chloe, can you go to the next slide? Because it hasn't moved yet. There. And would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Dr. Chloe Sharp and I'm Head of Grant Services here at MPA. So I've been in grants for about 10 years in lots of different guises. So from project management to writing grants for my own projects to helping clients get grants for themselves to do some amazing innovations. So we've got some really great products here at MPA, ranging from a grant Kickstarter, which is a training program, grant writing, grant coaching, and grant reviews.
Excellent. I think, Chloe, you're going to put up some polls, but just before you do, if anybody wants to ask any questions, you'll see along the top right-hand toolbar, there's a little speech quotation bubble with a question mark in there. If you want to leave any questions in there, I'll try and pick them up as we go along. If not, there will be some time at the end for Q&A. So have you got your polls there, Chloe?
Yeah, so we've got two, and the first one is just coming up. So the question is, what do you currently know about grant funding? So very little. I've never applied. I've applied but not won before, and I've won grant funding before. So the majority is so far is very little. So I think I'll share that. Share that now. And one has applied before but not won before, and one has won grant funding before, which is great. So it's good to know that the majority have never applied before. Okay, and the next question is, what are you most keen to learn about today? So the first one is identifying grant opportunities. The second one is maximising my success when applying for a grant. And the third one is role of tax credits and how to approach them in the context of grants. So identifying grant opportunities, that's 88%.
Yeah, one more I think there's a lot of opportunities out there, aren't there? So I know you're going to go over some of them, or where they can come from as such, but trying to work out the right one for you could be quite challenging.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, so what we're going to look at now is the bit that you kind of wanted to learn most about, which is how to, well, actually, sorry, before I go on to that, Sam is going to talk about how to get the most from different types of non-dilutive funding. So over to you, Sam.
I think one of the most, businesses go through a journey, On here, it's done a very straightforward, you start up, scale up, growth and exit. And at various stages through that journey, you'll need various different types of help and funding. So on here, it sort of gives you a bit of an indication of the types of funding that are available to you. When we talk about undiluted funding, we're talking about funding that doesn't require you to give away shares of your business. And ideally at that early stage of your business is you don't really want to be giving shares, because you're going to be giving shares that really don't identify or relate to the true value of where your business could go. So that's why grants seem to be quite important at that sort of early stage, that first half of the business. And that obviously at that stage, it's quite important to get everything up and running and going. And we've been talking about that in our whole series of business resilience, about how you're preparing for that. So this is really just to highlight to you where those grants sit in. Obviously, as your business changes and develops, especially if you've got a innovation roadmap as well, you become quite a mature company, but your innovation could be starting again, and then you could be going back into that cycle where you're looking at grants again for that next round of innovation. I think now Chloe's going to sort of take us through how do you identify the right grants for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So first of all, I wanted to give an overview of the different types of grants available. So we have open grants, such as the Innovate UK Smart Grant, which is probably the one that you might have heard of from Innovate UK. So this one is very, very competitive, open to any industry and project, but it can be last resort in terms of no other types of funding are available, such as from themed competitions, or you've tried themed competitions and they haven't worked, so you're going for the Smart Grant. The focus here really is on commercialisation, so they really want to see a return on investment to the taxpayer. Then the second type of grant is the themed competitions. So here you have a much higher chance of winning, because the pool and the competition is generally going to be smaller. So the different types of competitions can be through Innovate UK. If you go onto their website, then you'll see lots of different types of competitions, such as collaborative R&D. I think there was one closing today or yesterday, which is about environmental monitoring. So they're very, very specific. And much earlier stage competitions are for research councils, but there's other government funding bodies, other government bodies which also offer funding as well. For example, the Ministry of Defence, where they have the accelerator. And then there's non-UK competitions such as Horizon Europe, and they offer, well, not them, but in Europe they also offer EIC and Eureka Eurostars as well. So generally they are for innovation, large consortiums and much higher budgets compared to the other competitions based in the UK. They can be much more complicated in terms of the application process, maybe tiered as well, and there's generally a very long writing time. So with Innovate UK, typically it's around sort of 3 to 4 weeks to write it, and with much bigger projects like Horizon Europe, that can take about 6 to 7 weeks to write that.
Chloe, just going to ask, how do you know if you should be applying for a UK grant or an EU grant?
So it really depends on what your budget is, and what your aspirations and objectives are for the project. So if you wanted to go for, like if you're really looking at scaling and growing, maybe even trialing out an innovation in a much wider context, then Horizon Europe might be really, really useful for you, because you can access a wide market, and maybe test your innovation and develop it in a much sort of broader, bigger way. But with themed competitions, they can be used for feasibility studies, so you can test out early-ish sort of ideas, maybe around the sort of proof of concept type area, and also look at industrial research as well. So this might be very focused on whether an innovation works in a particular environment. So they can be more focused, so the budgets are a bit smaller.
Excellent, thank you.
So in terms of the sources for grant opportunities, the writing might be a bit small. If it is, then you can change the layout of your screen. So at the top, you've got active cameras. So I think there's a drop down on there, so you can sort of change left and right view if you want to make this writing a bit bigger. So what I wanted to do was give quite a broad range of sources really for grant opportunities. So the first one is Innovate UK, the innovation funding portal, or funding service, sorry. On here, there are usually lots of different types of competitions. There are areas that they're focusing on at the moment, for example, transport and creative industries. So here we see the Creative Catalyst. So that's an example of one of the themed competitions. Then we have KTN, which is the Knowledge Transfer Network. And just recently, this has been updated to include the Business Connect service, which was Innovate UK Edge. So here, this helps to categorise and make sense of all the grants that are available under that UKRI umbrella. And so Innovate UK is under that umbrella. So if you were to go onto their website, then you could click on any one of these areas. So say, for example, robotics and AI, then you can have a look at the networks they have there, events, funding opportunities. So it's just easier to kind of navigate because there's just so much information out there. It can be a little bit overwhelming. And under that robotics and AI umbrella, for example, they have Bridge AI. So you can get newsletters, and then some of the opportunities start coming to you. So I would highly recommend signing up to newsletters to be notified really as to the funding opportunities and events and things available, because there's just a lot out there at the moment. Then we have Horizon Europe, Eurostars and EIC. So that is also a really good source for grants. Some of them are very specific, and because there's lots of specific competitions, sometimes it can take a little bit of time to navigate that website. Also, we have the government grants that I mentioned, such as the Ministry of Defence. But then if you have a look at government websites under different departments, for example, Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, sometimes they have funding or prizes or accelerators available there too. And then there's different kind of search engines that you can use, so or websites. So here we've got an example of a local council or local government website. Usually there's a lot of support for businesses locally, and there might be finance available too. So as we're based in sort of Cranfield, which is in Bedfordshire, but close to Milton Keynes, I thought that I would give an example of Milton Keynes Council here. So here's a snapshot of the City Council website and the finance and business support available. So there might be smaller grants available there, around sort of up to 5k, around that kind of grant, but it's every little helps. And also there's websites for finding grants through the government. So there's a government website here where you can browse different grants. They're not necessarily linked or under that UKRI umbrella, so it can kind of open up lots of other opportunities. Then we have SEMLEP as well. So this is an example of the local enterprise partnerships. So in our area, we've got SEMLEP. Soon that's going to be changing because some are going to be amalgamating with local authorities. Some aren't. So if you wanted to have a look in your area, then go to LEP networks and click on your area, and then you'll be able to see what's happening. Also, charities such as National Lottery might be a good opportunity for grants as well, particularly community grants. And if you're doing early stage research, then some charities can be sort of good for sources of research, such as the Wellcome Trust. So I've given you quite a broad range of opportunities there, but what I wanted to highlight was that there's just so many different places to get grants. Innovate UK Smart Grant is the one that most people have heard of, but there's just so much more.
Excellent, thank you. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle, is trying to identify what they can use and when, and how it fits into their plans. And just trying to keep on topic of yesterday with the budgets, there was a lot more announcements of the government putting more money into research and development. So a lot of that's going to be coming through as
Mm.
grants and accelerators, and how they've included um, more industries. So obviously before it's around net zero, health and well-being, digital transformations, so all your AI and quantum, but how they were looking a lot more within life science, green technology, more into automotive and aerospace. Now, one thing that we all see and we know is that grants are very, very competitive. So what do you do to give yourself the maximum chance of success?
Yeah, so there's uh, different ways of approaching the grant. So I wanted to go over some of these in a bit more detail. The first one really is this almost a Goldilocks effect, because it's having the right project in the right competition, and you're the right business to deliver that. So I've mentioned the competition. So deciding on the right competition will mean going through their eligibility and scope, and understanding what they're trying to get from it, and also if it lines up with your business strategy as well. So understanding what the right project is, for Innovate UK, there would need to be a good level of innovation. So this would need to be ideally radical, game-changing innovation, and whether you're the right business to deliver that. So have you got the right team? Have you got much funding available? Are you in a good financial position to be able to deliver your grant, and also support it, particularly at the beginning, because we'll go into it in a minute, but you need to have much funding available, because the grant is usually paid in arrears quarterly. So you'll need to have funding available for those first 3 months. So the financial position and whether the match funding is liquid is really important. So these aspects will affect the success of your grant application. And when you talk to us about your grant and what you have in mind, these are the things that we're thinking about when we're advising you as to whether the grants are good for you right now, whether they could be good for you in the future, and if the grant is good, then what is the right competition? So I wanted to look at match funding next. So I mentioned that it's good to have that available, particularly in cash, at the beginning. So there's different ways of doing match funding. So we have advanced funding from R&D tax credits as an option, a loan in principle, maybe equity and ring fencing part of angel or VC funding for particular projects, particularly if you've got a grant strategy, then you'll know roughly how much to put aside for that, and reinvesting profits as well. So ideally for match funding for Innovate UK, it needs to be low risk, and that's something that will be spoken about in the grant application itself. And if you were to be awarded a grant, that would be part of the due diligence process, as part of the project setup, just to make sure that there is enough funding available, and it sort of matches what you've mentioned in the grant application. So yeah, it does need to be in the business bank account really at the beginning of the project.
I think the other thing as well with a grant is that it's paid in arrears, isn't it? So you've got to be able
Yeah.
to deliver the first quarters of work and therefore cost, and pay for that before you then do your audit, and you'll get awarded your first quarter's part of the
Mm.
grant.
Yeah, that's right. So it's really important to have a clear project plan. So you have all the work packages set out. So in the grant application, that could be set out on a Gantt chart. So to figure out what first quarter looks like, you would pretty much put a vertical line, and then you would look at, what work have we done in that first quarter, and how much do we need, and how much are we going to be getting back in arrears.
I know you talked about advanced funding against your R&D, but a lot of the R&D advanced funders now will also do advanced funding against your grant as well. So they'll look at giving you the option to be able to cover that first quarter's worth of work and have it available in principle if you need it to help as well. But as long as you've got some of that funds yourself, there are different ways that you can maybe cover some of that as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's good to have, and you can blend options as well. If you had advanced funding and reinvest in profits and things. So here I kind of just wanted to highlight the maturity of the innovation, which is part of that right project that we looked at in the Goldilocks effect. So here we've got the TRLs, so they are technology readiness levels, and they can assess how mature an idea is or how mature an innovation is. So if it's very early stage and it's it might be something that's a PhD student is working on, or it's in a lab environment and it's very early stage, then that's likely to be funded by a research council, because it's so much technical risk there, and it's likely to be cutting edge. Then as we move along the technology readiness levels, we're about 3, which is about proof of concept level, up to about 6, which is where you might have something which can be like a prototype that can be tested in or like a mid-fidelity prototype which could be tested in a relevant or simulated environment. That's something that an innovation grant could be used for. And that type of work is industrial research, which is where you have an idea, you're looking at whether it works, which is feasibility, and then looking at testing it in a real life environment. So that itself is really interesting project for Innovate UK, because it's bringing it quite close to market, and then it's kind of de-risking the commercial side of things as well, because if you've had that user feedback and you've tested it in a real life environment, then that shows whether it's going to work or not once it's on the market. And then we've got much later mature innovation, which is where you have a high fidelity prototype, or even like an alpha beta version of the product, which you might test in more of a real life environment. So this is called experimental research, and this is sort of 45% funded by Innovate UK. So feasibility studies and industrial research is about 70% funded, just because there's a lot of innovation work happening there, and experimental research is lower because it's closer to market and there's a lower level of R&D. So just kind of wanted to indicate from a success perspective that it's about pitching the right level of innovation and the right project, the right type of projects as well for funding.
Great. So there's quite a lot of stuff that needs to go into your grant bid, and I think you're going to now sort of help us sort of go through what does a grant bid application look like. There's your next slide.
Yes, yeah, that's right. So what I wanted to show here is the writing side of a successful grant application, and just to highlight some of the bits that are most important, which help to maximise its success in a grant application. Once you've identified those opportunities, then making sure you've got a good story to match in the grant application is really important. So a grant most of it is about narrative and about the story. So if you can show your motivation and your why, and why you're the best person to be doing this, you might have a personal motivation for doing this particular piece of work and this particular product or service. So all that needs to shine through, as well as the innovation that you're looking at doing as well. So the analogy that I use is like a tree. So the main story is the trunk of the application, and that story is reinforced over and over again in the grant application. And then you have the branches, which are the questions. So you'll go into different parts of the story in much more detail, and also evidence all your claims. And there's no surprises as well if you've set it out in a way that it's a story. So you've introduced the main idea of the product and the project, etc., right at the very beginning, who's in the team, and then you're just kind of reiterating and expanding throughout the grant application. And as I mentioned earlier, having the right business, right project, right competition is really good, but also in the grant application itself, it's just making sure that that innovation level and type of project is important as well, and making sure that the project budget matches up with that and the level of impact that the output is going to have. Also answering the questions. This might sound really silly, but a lot of the questions are sometimes not fully answered. So just double checking that everything has been covered. Using diagrams as well to do a lot of the hard work, because you have diagrams that you can use in the appendices, which could be sketches and like an overview of what an architecture could look like a technical architecture. So those help to support what you're saying in the grant application. So you don't have to do a lot of explanation, because the images are helping you. Also, if you're able to get a copy of the marking scheme with the Smart Grant, the marking scheme is available online publicly. So having a good understanding of the scoring can help as well. And also, grant applications are all about collaboration. That's the bit that I really like about grant writing, because everyone brings something really important. So as a client, you bring all of your experience, your passion as to what you're looking to do in the project, and all of your knowledge and everything about the innovation. So I find that really interesting. And also across your team, you might have a technical lead that brings all of that technical knowledge. You might have someone commercial bringing that sort of side of things, and then we bring the grant expertise if you're going to work with us. So yes, it's all about collaboration with writing a good grant.
Excellent. How long, and I know, so let's talk about Innovate Smart Grants. How long does it take to write a grant application? Because I know that they are virtually basically a 3-month window. The competition is open. You've got a deadline date. Most people leave things to the deadline. How practical is that? How prepared do you need to be?
So ideally, if you've been through our grant Kickstarter, you'll have a really good idea as to all of the documentation that's needed for a grant application. For example, the sales forecast for the innovation, the return on investment, that kind of thing. But if not, then typically it can take about 4 weeks to write a grant application. But if you've done that prep work, it can be a bit of a shorter time period. So overall, it's about sort of 3 to 4 weeks writing for an Innovate UK competition, but kind of condensed, it's really about sort of 4 or 5 whole days writing it. But a lot of the time, it's about getting that information from you, reviewing and collaborating as well. But if you're kind of going to go with us for writing the grant application, then we would do a lot of the heavy lifting for the writing, and you'd be providing information and reviewing the grant.
Excellent. I think there's a lot of information there. What's your main your key bit of advice?
My advice would be to for success kind of thing.
Yeah.
It would be to make sure that the grant that you're going for is really going to serve your company. And because some people kind of get excited about an opportunity that comes up for a grant, they might have recently been told about a smart grant, for example, and they kind of jump at that chance. But it's good to kind of think about grants in terms of a strategy and break up your product roadmap into smaller pieces to figure out if what types of grants and timing would be good for your business. Then you can kind of go into it, with a plan.
Excellent, thank you. I think you've got a summary, because there's a lot you've covered. The next slide is your summary, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So what we've spoken about today is when to use grant funding, how to identify grant opportunities. So we looked at quite a broad range of opportunities, from local funding up to EU funding, how to maximise your chance of success. So we've got that Goldilocks effect to have the right project, the right competition, the right business, low risk match funding, looking at the outcomes of the grant projects, which is related to that TRL and what you can achieve in a project by going for the right type of project, and writing successful grant applications. We wanted to highlight here that in April we're launching the grant Kickstarter, which we're really excited about, and that's going to be based in Cranfield. So have a look on our website if you want to have a look at more information on that. And if you're interested, contact us through the website. I would be happy to give you more information. But here it's much more we're going much more into strategizing your grants, evaluating the level of innovation that's needed, assessing the commercialization, so looking at competition analysis, market analysis, that kind of thing, and getting your business grant ready. So when you want to go for a grant, then you've got everything that you need at hand.
And with the Kickstarter, it's not just you giving them information, they've got the opportunity to think of it from their own business point of view as well. I know you do some business planning, mapping and stuff like that. So it is sort of very much about the people that are attending, not just you telling them.
Exactly.
So come out with something tangible at the end of it.
Yeah, that's right. So it's very hands-on. There's lots of exercises, so then you come away with that blueprint so that you can rinse and repeat for strategizing grants.
Great. Yeah. Now there's a couple of questions. So there's questions on the chat, and then somebody who's left has sent me a question as well, apologising that to go and do something else. But somebody's asking about how to find out which LEP is relevant to them. Is it based where they're registered or where their offices are? So say they're based in London, which most probably will come under the Greater London LEP, but they are based in Hampshire. So would they be looking at either London or Hampshire? Does it matter? Do you try both?
Yeah, you could do both. Yeah,
I don't know what the Hampshire one is, but I think it's quite easy to Google it. But happy to help if you want on that.
Yeah, on the LEP website they have a map, so then you can sort of pinpoint the area which is sort of closest to your companies, or in terms of your trading address and registered address.
Excellent. So you've done the hard bit and you've won your grant. What other help does Innovate UK give to support businesses once they've won their grant?
So Innovate UK offer quite a lot, really. So they're happy to advertise what they've supported. So you get that PR and marketing with it as well. And when I've been part of the grant projects, it's particularly near the end, in those kind of like final meetings, they're really keen to share it with the network within Innovate UK. So it can get quite a bit of exposure, and also you might be interested. They might also invite you to events to kind of showcase your work and things. So it's really good from like a sort of an awareness perspective, and sort of from that also, I think having an Innovate UK grant application can be quite reassuring for VCs and angel as well. So it can kind of lead on later onto those kind of things.
Excellent. You might not know this off the top of your head, but another questions that come in: are there any grants that's focused on financial services startup?
I'm just trying to think, because there was AI professional and financial services, I think, last year. I'm not sure if that's coming around again. But there are three. I think there's three. There's an accelerator, and there's a couple of. There's an innovation voucher, and there's something else. I can't remember what it is. For AI for financial services, because I think that there is definitely a drive to be using AI much more in the financial sector for tax and accountancy companies.
So we can have to pick up with you on that. There was a question that came on the question thing. we've got a little bit more time. So I think from one of the things, what's the most common mistake businesses make when they're applying for grants?
The biggest mistake that they make is either they don't fully answer the question, or they either overpromise or underpromise what is going to be in a project. So some companies can say they're going to do loads and loads of work and achieve lots with quite a small budget, but when they come to deliver it, it can kind of backfire a little bit. So I think kind of having the right time for the project and the right budget can help prevent that.
Brilliant. I know one that I get asked a lot, just filling some time in case anybody else wants to ask anything. And I think I very briefly mentioned it at the beginning, is how do you know when you should go for undiluted funding, your grants, or go for diluted funding, which is your equity funding?
Yeah, I think with non-dilutive funding, I don't think it's always sort of first. I think when it comes to fundraising, like equity is usually the first thing in mind, but it can be quite expensive for the company in the long run. So having non-dilutive funding and exploring those options as thoroughly as possible is always beneficial. And there's quite a lot of crossover as well with dilutive and non-dilutive type funding, because you still need to show like the customer need, your market opportunity, that kind of thing. So so I think it's good to consider non-dilutive funding. There's lots of different sources. So we've mentioned grants, but some accelerators as well offer like non-dilutive funding. So it's good to kind of look at them first, just so it doesn't cost your business in the long run.
Yeah, no, excellent. So part of our Building Business Resilience program is that we've got a couple more webinars coming up. One of them is going to be around equity funding as well. So, looking at all areas of funding, and we'll be joined by some VCs on that to give you some insight in how you prepare yourself for equity funding. And I know there's quite a lot of crossover between grant funding as well, because your business plans and your market research and your commercialization and your growth, what you think is going to get, what's your business, can't think of the word, the revenue you're going to get out of it, all that sort of thing, the return on investment is very similar between a grant and equity funding. So that base work that you have to do will be similar. And then another one that we've got in the diary is about exit strategy. And it's one of the things that we often talk about, that even at the beginning of your journey, you need to know what your exit's going to look like. Are you just looking to get your technology to a certain stage and then you think you're going to sell it on? Are you, is this just the start of your portfolio? What's your succession planning? What does exit look like for you from a financial term? So how much revenue do you need to be generating to actually get a successful exit from the business? Or who would you be looking to sell your business to, so you can make sure that you're setting everything up right from the beginning to make yourself more attractive to the ideal buyers. So that's something that we'll be covering as well. Thank you all for attending. I know taking some time out of busy schedules is really can be really tricky. Chloe's details are on the next slide. So if anybody wants to get in touch with Chloe, if you've got any specific questions on grants, her email is chloe.sharp@mpa.co.uk. If you're interested in understanding how the Kickstart program would work for you, to how to build that strategy for grants, then also let Chloe know. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it. We will send out a recording to you all as well. And if there's no more questions, thank you everybody for attending. And thank you, Chloe.
Thank you very much. Thank you.